This episode is brought to you by Americas Rehab Campus. Get on the road to recovery with the best rehab in beautiful Arizona. Dial 1-833-272-7342. That's 1-833-ARC-REHAB.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now tuned in to the Archer.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Arcast. My name is Buddha, and I'm in the studio today, ready to go. The energy is right. I want to introduce you guys to the lady I have in the studio with me right now. This is a huge blessing to have her in here. Asked her if she would be willing to come through and share her testimony, and she said yes. Let's schedule it as soon as possible. So she's here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. She's an RSS BHT, Cynthia Smith. Yeah, that's what's up. How are you doing, Miss Cynthia?
I am doing absolutely great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
And you're working today, hustling?
Yes.
How's it going? Are you off or are you just taking a break for a little bit?
Just taking a break. I did a group this morning and it went really well. So.
Good. I had a couple clients coming in here earlier too. I miss sometimes like being able to talk with the clients. A gentleman came through and he was just kind of telling me like just some of the things he's been experiencing and everything, and it's cool to see. He mentioned you, he mentioned a couple of the other RSSs and just how it's very impactful, the groups and stuff like that. So it's pretty awesome. Thank you for doing what you do here. It's really cool.
I love it.
So you're in recovery yourself, right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. How many days you got so far?
So my clean date is February 22nd, 2019.
Man, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, let me see. I have my little counter on here.
No, you're good. I like the little gum right there. Just holding it in place. That's what's up. I like it. Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Right. Yep. So I have 1,698 days.
Oh man, one more round of applause. We're gonna do that real quick. So, you know, I really want to, like I said, thank you for coming through. Shout out to Ray if you're listening, Unc. I love you, bro. Thank you for letting her come through and clearing up the schedule and getting that in. It's a pleasure to be able to sit here and to hear these amazing stories from these amazing people with this strength and everything like that. So to go with the Arcast in the format of the Arcast, we're going to start from the beginning. Is that cool?
Yes.
Okay. So first things first, where are you from? Are you from Tucson?
So I was actually born in Tucson. But when I was in 5th grade, my family moved to Maryland and I attended high school out there.
Oh, man. Maryland?
Yeah.
What made you guys move out there?
So interestingly, my stepdad worked for ATF as a special agent.
Okay. Dang. That's cool.
Yeah.
Your stepdad?
Yes.
Dang. Man. And you were 5 years old when this happened?
No, I was in 5th grade.
Oh, 5th grade.
Yes.
Okay. So you're like 10, 11 years old.
Right.
Do you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah. So my sister, she's actually 11 months younger than me to the day.
Okay.
So we were pretty close. And then my brother is a year and a half after my sister.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that was your stepdad. Do you have any relationship with your biological father?
I do. I did not for a very long time. He was around when I was really young, but it was a very toxic environment.
Yeah.
So my mom ended up leaving and I didn't see him until I became an adult.
Okay.
I moved back out here.
Okay. How was that for you back then? Like when you think back 10, 11 years old, having to uproot everything, I'm guessing all your family and stuff is from here too, right? Was that pretty difficult?
It was very difficult. I was very close with my grandparents. They helped raise me. We lived with them after my mom left my dad.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a very special relationship with them and it was really difficult leaving them. And then also it was a huge culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different. Arizona and Tucson's definitely more accepting of different people than it was out there. Like I remember in elementary school, the new kids that came along, everybody wanted to meet them and be their friend and get to know them. When I moved to Maryland, that experience was completely different.
Really?
Yeah, it was rough.
And I mean, it's been a long time since I've looked at a map, but it's way at the end, right? Isn't it like way on the last state on the East Coast?
Pretty close. Yeah. It's over there by Pennsylvania.
That's nuts, man.
Washington, D.C. is right there. It's part of like Virginia and Maryland, Washington, D.C.
What a trip, like thinking about the culture shock that you must have experienced. Because I mean, that's one of the blessings of being here, at least for me, is just having the culture, the people, and the heritage, all of these amazing things to get up and uproot and then go to the East Coast. I just couldn't imagine how different that must have been.
Yeah, it was different. A lot of the kids and the families, like if your grandparents didn't go to school together, and your parents went to school together, you were an outsider.
Oh, man.
And they weren't as friendly as Tucson is, for sure.
Was it like, I think that's kind of, at least for me personally, thinking about it, 5th grade. It's around the time that my wife and I, we moved out. We had our kids leave the school. So I think it was like at a good time at that point because they had their friends, but they weren't like those close connection, like friends, like the diehard ride or die friends. You know what I mean? So, but do you feel that impacted you a lot moving out there? Like, did it affect you at the time?
Oh, definitely. That's when I noticed my depression starting.
Really?
I was about 5th grade. And also we had to be homeschooled for middle school because we lived in Baltimore City and my mother was extremely scared of sending us to school. So she ended up homeschooling us. So
was there a reason for her anxiety at the time?
Yeah, well, when she checked into the school, she had seen that there was a lot of drugs, a lot of violence, a lot of young pregnant women, young pregnant girls. And so she was like, Oh,
okay. So she was the one who homeschooled you, homeschooled you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. And how, I mean, that's a different dynamic. I know one of the hosts, Michaela, she did homeschooling and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Would you, I don't even know how to ask it because I feel like it would be biased because your parents would be like, yeah, you're a good student. You know what I mean? But do you think you were good at like learning and stuff back then? Did you have any issues with that or were you pretty solid on your education, like learning and doing things?
I know I personally was pretty solid. I actually was able to graduate high school early.
Oh, good for you.
So I just did a lot of schooling and learned a lot during those years. So I got ahead. So I did well with it. It was a little more isolating for sure. I missed the social interaction, but
it's different. I mean, I could only imagine. So you did all of middle school homeschool. Yes. Your mom also took care of your siblings as well. So they did the same thing. So you guys were all together in the classroom. Yeah, it's important. You got to get away because I'm sure that sibling rivalry got pretty rough at times. You know what I mean? But, so you did that and everything was cool, I'm guessing, through like the middle school stuff where you were doing pretty good. You said the depression started kicking in. What about when you went to high school? Is that the first time that you had gone to like a public school out there or were you back here already?
Yeah. So in high school, we actually moved to a different part of Maryland. And so I was able to attend public school for high school.
Okay.
And I mean, it was rough. Like, again, not as accepting as Tucson is, but it ended up being okay. So I enjoyed it. I did sports, did really well in school.
That's cool. What kind of sports did you do?
I did basketball, I did volleyball, and then I decided to try cheerleading. So I did that one.
Oh, dope. Okay. And do you feel that, because I think as like a father, one of the things that I love about my wife is that she's always putting the kids into like activities. I got into a lot of trouble because I never had any activities. Right. So do you feel like that helped or do you feel like it didn't really matter when it came to like you getting into trouble and doing things you shouldn't have been doing?
I definitely feel like it helped. Also, I played a lot of musical instruments that helped with a lot of my time. So, I mean, obviously I ended up getting addicted, but I do feel like it helped.
And how did you do in school when you went to high school? Did you excel pretty good?
Yeah, I did really well. I was a straight A student. I completed high school after my 10th grade year and I still walked.
That's dope.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I still walked with my class, but I was able to work full time and go to college from 11th and 12th grade.
All right. So. And how were up to that point, when graduated from high school a little bit early, had you dabbled at all at that point or no?
Yeah. So I started using pretty young, drinking, kind of partying. So even though I was a good student, I was doing the whole party thing every weekend, smoke weed.
Oh yeah. What age did that start?
Probably about 14.
Were your parents aware of it or were you pretty good at hiding it?
I was really sneaky about it for a while, but then sometimes they would find out. Yeah. And then my mom would ground me. One time she took my door off the hinges to my bedroom, put my mattress on the floor.
Yeah, that's rough.
And gave me as a high school girl like 3 outfits to wear all week.
Wow. Dang. I mean, it's like, what do you do though? Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's no book to it, right? You just got to try and hopefully just be the best parent that you can be. Your household growing up, with your stepdad and your mom and everything, was there love in your household that, you guys have a lot of love in your household at least? Yeah,
my mom was absolutely amazing. My stepdad, great. He was cool too. He was just, especially after he got his job with ATF and became a special agent, went through training, I noticed he changed.
Yeah.
It's a lot more harsh, abrasive, but he wasn't a horrible person at all.
I mean, it's hard, man. I mean, I have an uncle who works with forensics, and he's been there for like 20 some years. Like, I think that type of job it can really, even this job could really affect you if you don't have a way to refill that bucket. We do always talk about the ladle and bucket type of thing, helping your neighbor and helping fill them up with hope and positivity. And so it's hard in those type of fields.
Yeah.
So you said that you started dabbling when you were around 14 years old.
Yes.
But you were still able to graduate from high school, which is awesome. So you were functioning. That's cool. When you graduated, though, how was the dynamic? Were you still living at the house? How, did you have to get your own place? How did that stuff work out for you?
So I graduated high school. I was working full-time as a fitness trainer.
Oh, okay,
I was going to school. I was still partying quite a bit. And so it was weird because out there I could get into a lot of the bars underage. And so I would work at this gym. And it's kind of like more of like a small town type of thing. So everybody kind of knew each other. I worked at this gym during the day. So a lot of people just assumed that I was older.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people knew me, and like a lot of the security would work from the different bars. The security would work out at the gym that I worked at. So I would head up to like Red Eyes, Dock Bar, things like that, and be able to get into the bar because they all recognized me and just assumed it was fine. It's different out there.
Really?
I got pulled over drinking and driving, and a cop followed me home.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was it. He was just like, I'm just gonna make sure you make it home okay. Like, I got caught doing it again. They're like, we'll just call your parents. Yeah.
I love seeing how people react to that sound effect. Some people are like, holy shit, what is going on right
I love it.
But dang, that's crazy. Yeah, it's completely different. I think Arizona's like one of the worst states in the country for that. They can get your ass locked up quick.
Oh, yeah.
I
found out.
Oh, shit. We're not there yet. We're going to go back. So you were, just kind of doing your thing, but you were functioning at the time, it seemed like.
Yeah, I was functioning. And I think that's one of the things I ended up chasing after that, trying to get back to. And it just, for a long time, was trying to get back to being able to use and function. But yeah, so I actually started dating a man that was quite a bit older than me. So I moved in with him. And at that point, my mom and my stepdad, things had started getting really rocky. Okay. My stepdad was having a lot of affairs. And
oh, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he broke my mom's heart, So they decided to get divorced. And even though they were married for 10 years, my mom was just like, I don't want anything. And so she just started packing up to leave, to return to Arizona.
Okay.
And live with my grandparents for a while until she got her feet back on the ground. And so my sister and brother decided to, well, obviously, because like they were still in high school, they moved back out here with her. And I was like, well, I want to stay. I'm in love. Yeah. And I decided to take my ASVAB test for the Air Force. And so I did that and I scored really high. So that was my plan. I was like, I'm going to stay out here, do the Air Force, stay with this 38-year-old man.
Ooh. Ooh. And you weren't old enough to drink yet, right?
No.
Ooh. All right, cool. All right. Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. So that was kind of strange. So I was all set up to do the Air Force, and I was running because I used to run marathons too while I was a fitness trainer. And I was running one day. I had gotten a pair of Nikes. So I'm going to throw shade at Nikes. A bad idea. So I ended up getting really bad, like an overuse injury to my foot from running. And so I went to the doctor, and they had prescribed me Percocets for it. And now I had done Percocets before because my stepdad had a prescription for like oxycodones and things. And occasionally I would steal them to get high or bring them to parties for my friends and all of us to get high. Sometimes I would use them for like, consecutively and then end up really sick and not understand that it was withdrawals because I didn't know anything about addiction.
Yeah.
And so my mom at one point was taking me to all these specialists. Like, there's something wrong with her. She just gets like this randomly, like deathly ill sometimes. And
oh man, yeah. And I mean, does your mom have a history of addiction at all or anything like that?
No, my dad does. My biological father does. He's still going in and out of prison today. But that's one of the things we talk about a lot is like those generational curses, man. Yes. For real. I mean, it's literally just that. It's generational. It's passed on. Yeah.
It makes me worry about my kids. Hopefully, I hope and pray that we have broken those chains. I hope and pray. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely rough. And I think the enabling of where you were working, what you were doing, and then, this 38-year-old man, when you think about it too, I'm sure like where you're at now, it's like, what business does this 38-year-old man have with this young, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, you don't even see it. You don't see the mess at that point. So there's nothing you really see to clean up, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And so with the prescription, I was taking it and I, enjoyed how it made me feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was avoiding some of the pain that was going on too with the divorce.
Oh, yeah.
Because my stepdad had spent, our whole lives basically from the time he had gotten involved in our lives. Like they married when I was in 5th grade, but he had been in my life since I was in 3rd grade saying, oh no, I'm your dad. I love you guys. I chose you guys. Like, anybody can become a dad, but I choose you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just like, I'm having all these affairs and I'm done. And it was just, and so even though I was telling myself, like, I don't care, like, screw him, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I always had like kind of a wall to kind of protect myself from getting hurt like that with him. But I feel like it's still deep down somewhere, it affected me. And then also my mom moving all the way across the country, not having that support. Yeah. And so it was like that prescription just came in and like, it was different. It fixed things for me is what it felt like at the time.
It makes sense. I think about that, and I don't know if this is correct. Maybe you can fill me in on this, but I think whether you're a male or a female, when you've been hurt by a parent, like a father, for example, I think that feeling of like, why didn't he love me, or why is he in his addiction? Because we don't understand it, right? Like you said, this male comes into your life who plays that father figure, and it's the first time you've ever really allowed yourself to trust a man and allow, and then for them to do that type of thing to your mom. Yeah. Then you build just as big of a wall around the father figure in your life, the same way that your mom would have. Right. Because it's like, if you really loved me, how could you do this type of shit to us? It's like, it sucks because so many marriages nowadays, it's like a house of cards, man. I mean, it's really, especially, I couldn't imagine working for ATF, that stressful type of a position. I think as men, for some reason, we just have the hardest time with our pride and shit, like letting go of that and asking for help. And if you're not careful, that's where the enemy creeps in, and shit like that ends up happening. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it just like changed him, Yeah. Yeah. And then I remember even just finding these huge bottles of oxys that were prescribed to him. And now, like, looking back, I'm like, how did he get, like, I mean, they were legal, like he had them, but I was like, how is he getting all these? And like, he was taking them all the time because he had bad back problems. And I know that in his mind, he wasn't even aware that it was a problem. Yeah. He was taking his medication, but I could see where once he started getting prescribed those himself, I could see where that even started changing him a lot, Yeah. He probably, I mean, that's crazy. If you're saying it's a big ass bottle like that, he could have been buying them too. Who knows? Yeah. But like back then, I'm guessing this was like the 90s, or 2000s or whatever. They were just passing them shits out like they were nothing, like candy. Yeah. Yeah. It was different. Like when I got my prescription, that was an injury that should have never been prescribed, would never be prescribed opiates today. But this was before all that, before the big opioid epidemic. And that's crazy. So started that. Yeah. So you said that you got that injury from running. Yeah. And they got you that you had just dabbled. So like up until this point, the using was still fun. You still kicking back with your homies, drinking, taking oxys every now and then, and then I'm guessing around this time, once you started developing the codependency to this prescription is when it changed from being fun to like, oh shit, what do I do now? Right? Yeah, exactly. And so I was all set to go to the Air Force, but then with this prescription, I was completely strung out. So I was like, I can't do this. I can't go like this. So I ended up not going. I just got a job at like a dock bar, waitressing. I know, and bartending, and everybody was on them there. And so I just kept doing them. Yeah. And things were like spiraling out of control in my relationship too. I was up and down, and then it was just bad. So wow. And was that like a dream of yours since you were young, was to get into the military, do the Air Force type of thing? I really wanted it. Yeah, I really wanted, I don't know. Yeah, I did really want to do it. Like bad, but. And I'm sure that affected you too. Yeah. And not even being aware, like, were you aware that it was the substance at this point that was kind of holding you back? Or did you feel like there was just something internally that was keeping you back? Well, for a while it was internally, and I gotten a couple refills for the prescription. And then when I was really sick, the doctor was like, "Oh, well, my bad." Yeah. Yeah. And so like I went in to get a refill, and I had run out of the pills early.
And he was like, okay, like you're cut off.
Oh, I had a doctor do that shit
Yeah.
to me too.
And I was like, why? And he's like, you can't take more than you are prescribed. Like you can't run out of them early. That means you're abusing them. So I can't continue to write the prescription for you. And it was like a heads up, like you're going to have withdrawals, you know? And so then when I saw how sick I was and just like at that point, like the addiction bug like had me and I was like, I can't go and do this. Like
that's nuts.
Yeah.
And were you pretty transparent about it with your mom at the time? Did you like once you understood, you didn't? Oh, so he told you that, and you were just kind of like, "Oh crap, I didn't."
Yeah, she had already. She was already in Arizona, and like I didn't talk to her very much.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, she moved down here.
Yeah.
So you were independent then?
Yeah.
Out there on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and then so so I'm guessing you might have been staying with this dude or whatever it might have been. So how long did that last?
That lasted like probably about a year. I dated him on and off for 2 years, but I lived by myself in Maryland for about a year.
Okay.
So I continued to use opiates. That led into being at work one day and not being able to find the pills. And one of my coworkers being like, oh, well, there's these capsules and it does the same thing that those pills do. But it was China white heroin. So it was heroin.
Damn.
And she was like, all you need to do is just sniff like a quarter of this. And it's like taking several Oxy 80s, you know, and you'll be good. And it's a lot cheaper. It's like $20 per capsule instead of, you know, the amount of money I was spending on the pills.
Whew. So, I mean, there's really no room for even like fear, really, I'm guessing, of trying something new because you were in so much pain.
Yeah. And I just had no idea like how dangerous, I guess, opiates were.
Yeah.
You know, none of my friends, I mean, my friends were partiers in high school, but none of them were dying from addiction yet. Now, since then, I've lost so many friends from high school to the disease of addiction from overdoses. But at the time, like we didn't understand how powerful it was. Like, it was just a good time.
Yeah, man, that sucks how it draws you in like that, thinking about that, you know? So you were dealing with that for a while. You know, how long did that happen until you moved down here? Like, was that where all of your addiction took place, was out there in Maryland? No,
that's where it all just started. And so I ended up getting in a lot of legal trouble out there within that year. Okay. So it went from like sniffing it to injecting it.
Wow.
To driving into Baltimore City and moving it.
Oh,
and so I had gotten caught doing stuff out there. And now in Maryland at the time, heroin possession is a misdemeanor. But I got caught up moving it and stuff like that. And so my boyfriend was oblivious, basically, even though I had track marks all over my arms. Like,
really? No clue?
No clue. So my mom hadn't been hearing from me because I just wouldn't return her call because I was just high.
Living my best life.
Yeah.
Out there in Maryland.
So she was worried and she started having nightmares about me being like dead in a ditch somewhere. Oh, and God. So one day she randomly shows up in Maryland and is knocking on the door. Where I lived with my boyfriend. Now he was gone at work. He worked for the fire department, so he'd be gone for like 24 hours at a time, and then he'd have like 3 days off. But so she was downstairs like for a good long time, like just banging on the door before I finally opened it. And she's like, she saw my arms and like her face, man, like she knew. She was like, yeah. And that was like the saddest and most scared I'd ever seen my mom before. And she was like, wow, like this is bad.
Yeah. The connection that as parents, like you have with your kids, I think, do you have kids by any chance?
Yeah, I have one. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you think about it. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, Cindy's not answering her fucking phone.
Yeah,
like,
my mom would know.
There's some shit going on. You know what I mean? She probably was like, you need some sort of dream or what. Like, I believe, you know, my higher power, right? Like, I believe he speaks to you through visions and dreams and stuff like that. It's like she probably had those thoughts of like, you need to get your ass down there ASAP and go check on this girl. That's crazy. That must have been like, holy moly.
So she showed up, and so I ended up breaking down, telling her the truth, and I told her, well, I'm out right now. I got an attorney for my legal issues. I'm out right now, but these detectives or whatever they were, task force, it was the heroin task force, they're like following me like everywhere. Like they would show up at my work in like plain clothes, and they would just follow me everywhere. And even when she was staying there, she was like, I was like, you know, slumped out at one point, and there was a cop car that had pulled up and was just sitting in front of the apartment for a long time. And then at one point she said one time during the nighttime, she had heard knocking, banging on the door. But she was like, I didn't dare answer it. But it was strange because no one knew where I lived. That's also different out there, that if you're selling anything, you never sell anything out of your house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just a rule.
Yeah.
Typically, you don't bring that shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So no one knew where I lived, so I had no idea who it could have been banging on the door. Once I was out of the stuff that I had, I didn't get anything else while she was with me. Anything else to use. But basically I told her what happened. She called my stepdad and he's like, you need to get her out of here. Like, so we packed up all my stuff. I had my car shipped and I loaded like my stuff up in my car and then I got on a plane. Wow. And so I hit Tucson with my mom and the detective's calling me like, where did you go? I saw your car get loaded up. Like, where did you go? And
damn. So it wasn't even like because I always think when someone's talking about like they were followed or whatever, you know, typically the paranoia, the anxiety is like, holy, there's nobody, but you're just looking through the windows. Yeah. But because you had gotten caught up moving it, they made it very aware to you that they were following you and letting you know what was going on. And
I'd had like a partner that I was doing it with out there and he was wanted for all kinds of like really serious stuff. And they had put us on the news on like camera footage inside of a Kmart out there, and that they were looking for us. But I had parted ways with him, and so I think that part of why they were trying to follow me was to see if I would have contact with him again too. Okay. So it was really scary. I don't think that I realized like how much trouble that I really was in, but it definitely freaked my mother out. Damn. And even my stepdad was like, "Oh, like this could be bad." Yeah. You know? And
yeah, no, I mean that is crazy. So when you had that conversation with the officer asking you where you moved, what was the response when you told him that you'd moved here to Tucson?
Oh, so I just didn't say anything at first. I just hung up on him, you know? And so I ended up having to go back to Maryland and do my court date. And, you know, my mom flew out with me like a few months later. And I basically had to sign a plea saying that I would check in with like Maryland probation and parole every month. I didn't have to check in person, but I would have to send like that I was going to rehab. I would have to send that I had a job, and then I wasn't allowed to return to Maryland, like period. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So when you moved down here, how was that for you? Did you feel good coming back down here? Was it like a weight off of your shoulders knowing that you left all that shit behind?
Yes, absolutely. I loved it. I love being back in Tucson immediately. I was so happy. I got to stay with my grandparents again for a while when I first moved out.
Because you didn't have that. You didn't get to see them very often anymore, huh?
Right.
At all. How many times did you see them through that time that you were out there?
We'd usually come out like maybe like once a year, but maybe once a year, once every 2 years or so.
So not enough.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So now you were able to spend time with them.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it was great. And like, so I kicked it all cold turkey, but I didn't really get into actual recovery right away. And so I still didn't know anything about recovering. I just thought being in recovery was stopping using.
Yeah. It sounds so simple, huh? Just stop. I'm done. And how long did that last? Did you detoxing at your grandparents' house or wherever you were at? How long did you stay sober when you came back?
Not for very long. I hit my 21st birthday, and then
Oh man.
And then that led into drinking all the time, basically. So I would spend weeks down on 4th Avenue after my 21st birthday. Okay. So I put heroin down, picked up alcohol, and it was horrible. So I started going to an outpatient treatment program because I ended up getting a DUI within like probably the first month of me turning 21.
Okay.
Living here in Tucson.
Not so nice like they were over there. Oh, no. Huh?
Yeah. And everyone tried to warn me. They're like, you cannot do that here. Like,
that's nuts.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I found out. I have to find out the hard way.
Okay. So that, you know, you got the DUI. I'm sure you had a lot of classes, a lot of stuff you had to take after that happened. Yes. Other than that, was there more trouble and stuff that you got into down here? Like just getting caught up with stuff too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've had a lot of legal issues. So I got the DUI so then I started doing the outpatient treatment program. And it was one of those where it was an IOP, but you would go 3 times a week for 3 hours in the evenings.
So it had like flexibility for you to work and stuff like that if you needed to.
Exactly. But I was just there to make courts happy.
Yeah.
Same with like the Maryland thing, you know, like just submitting that, hey, I'm doing this, I'm completing this. But I wasn't taking it serious. And I was there to meet all the boys. I would show up with a water bottle full of vodka.
Living my best life.
Yeah. So just not taking it serious. And that's where I actually met my son's dad.
Okay.
And so I was still like, in my alcoholism. He was clean from heroin as well, but he was taking his treatment more serious. But then that became like this whole relationship of him trying to fix me for X amount of years. And so eventually I ended up finding heroin again out here because, after a while, like the alcohol just didn't do it for me anymore. Like I just started wanting my drug of choice again.
Yeah.
So I started using again. And so then I got pregnant. I stopped using everything cold turkey during my pregnancy, which I found out is dangerous, but I didn't know that at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, I just stopped using everything and I white knuckled it until like my son was born. And meanwhile, my son's dad, he was really into helping other people, really into AA. He was, he had a sponsor, was working his steps, doing a lot of service work, but I was just like his kryptonite, and it was really sad. And he was always there just, trying to save me, trying to fix me.
Yeah.
And always telling me like, one day you'll get it. Like one day everyone tells me that this is not a good relationship. But he's like, but I know one day you'll get it, But that went on for a while. But I ended up having, DCS got involved because, after my son was born, after about like 4 or 5 months of him being alive, like I just started drinking and using again.
Yeah.
So it was really, really bad.
Man.
And I started, I got a second DUI, went to jail. And like he was sure, he was like, oh, good. Like she's actually going to go to jail for a while this time for my DUI.
Maybe that'll keep her sober.
Yeah. But no, and so I was able to like manipulate my way into getting work release. So I was like using on work release. I was bringing drugs in.
Yeah.
And so he just reached like a point after a while of just being really defeated. But then with like the DCS stuff, he was really heartbroken over that. And it became like a battle between my mother and him fighting over my son.
Oh, yeah.
They hated each other. And it was, both like in this whole codependency thing over me. My mom had placement of our son for a while. So it was them basically battling it out.
Oh, and you're right there in the middle being pulled in 2 different directions.
Yeah. And so the DCS worker that we had would lie. And like, so she would call me and tell me, oh, well, he's saying that you're doing X, Y, and Z. And I'd be like, what? That's not true. And so then I'd be pissed off at him. And then she would call him and tell him that I said that he was doing all this stuff. So him and I were always fighting too.
Damn, she was for real?
I got her in so much trouble when I recorded it. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, good for you though.
Yeah, because finally we were able to put 2 and 2 together. But so it was just this big battle for a while. And she'd be like, oh, it's already been like 3 months. Just like, you should just give up now. Oh, it's already been 6 months. You just give up now. Like, you're not going to get your kid back. Like,
oh my God.
I know. And I recorded her saying that and played it for the judge in one of the courts.
Good.
Yeah. So, so they removed her, and she was put on like a suspension. I don't know what all happened. I know she got in like big trouble for it.
Well, good.
And removed from our case. But things were just bad. And so at a certain point, he was just really defeated and he ended up relapsing after years of being clean. So on Christmas Eve of 2013, he had used once before that. And I've been like, oh my gosh, like, please don't, like, even though it's so hypocritical and so irrational in my like addict brain, though, I was like, please stop. Like, oh my gosh, if you stop, I'll stop. So like he promised me he wouldn't do it anymore. And so of course I promised him I wouldn't do it anymore, knowing that I was lying, because I was physically dependent on it. And I just, So we had gone Christmas shopping. It was Christmas Eve. So we were over at the place where we were staying, like on the east side at like his house. And I was like, oh, I got to go early. Like, cause the plans were to go up to my grandparents' house for the Christmas Eve. They have like a big house. So we were like, we're going to stay the night and do Christmas in the morning.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, hey, I have to run some errands first. I'll just meet you up there. And so, of course, I went to like pick up, Yeah. And so I got up there to my grandparents' house and I went in the bedroom and I went and I did a shot and I overdosed. And so my grandmother actually found me, like I was laying like half off the bed with like a needle hanging out of my arm. And like,
oh man,
I know, my poor Christian sweet grandmother. And so paramedics came, the cops came to get me, and I was laying on top of the drugs. And so the cop went ahead and charged me with my first felonies for that.
Okay.
So I got to Northwest Hospital and I was like, oh my God, like, please, I got Narcan and everything. And I was like, please let me call my son's dad. I need to call him, because my mom had already told him Cindy overdosed, so you can't come over. So he ended up going home and used and overdosed and died. And
oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that.
yeah, that was like, yeah, that was probably like the worst thing, you know.
Yeah.
And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
so all Christmas Eve night, I thought he was mad at me and just not responding to me. Like, you have all of our kids' presents. Like, why? I'm sorry. Like, why won't you respond to me? Like, are you still going to come? It's Christmas. At least come for our son.
Yeah.
And no response, no response. And so then finally at some point on Christmas Day, I was like downstairs and I'm still like sending him all these angry text messages. And my mom, I see these two ladies I've never seen before outside with my mom. They come in the house and they walk down to the basement, down to the den where I was sitting. And my mom was crying. And it's like I immediately knew. And I was like, is this about Brian? And I was like, don't tell me. And I was just freaked the hell out. Like,
Yeah.
And so it was like one of those like, what do they call them? It's like those disaster team things from like the CRC that show up.
Oh yeah, the crisis team.
The crisis team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they showed up and I was like, what am I going to do now? You know, it was all just like, I was freaking out, throwing stuff. And they're like, you need to come to the CRC. And I was like, no, like, you know, I was just losing my mind. And I guess I had said something along the lines where they thought like they were afraid of me taking my own life. I'm sure my mom was afraid of me overdosing as well because I just overdosed the day before.
And I mean, the tension is so high after something like that. I mean, I'm sure part of you did feel like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible situation to have to be involved in.
Yeah. It was such like an enmeshed relationship. Like that. Yeah. That was like my entire world at the time. You know, I was like 22, 23 at the time. And so, yeah. So then they're like, well, you know, we're going to get a petition to bring you in. And so I was like, you know, whatever, I'm not going. And so next thing I know, Oro Valley Police shows up for a second time, you know.
Yeah. Like, you're going to find out what a petition means.
Yeah. So I go to the door because I heard someone knocking and I opened it. It was a cop. So I slam the door in his face and I start running up the stairs and he runs in behind me and grabs me by my foot and is like, yeah, he's like, you are going. And I just remember just like in my selfishness, you know, just crying in the back of the squad car, freaking out. Like, how could this happen to me? Why does this always happen to me? And this cop just like looking at me being like, it sounds like it happened to him, you know, and it just like clotheslining me like, wow. You know, in my selfishness, like it did. Like, yeah, I went in there.
Just to go, you know, into that, everything for one, you know, thank you for your transparency. I appreciate you being so honest and open. And, you know, you never, my whole thing is, like I said, before we started, you never know who's listening. You know, people have experienced some horrible things in their addiction, and being where you're at that point in your life, being so young, the addiction, the disease, man. I mean, you know, like I said, you know, I'm a very faithful person, but you know, one of the things that we teach here is like to find something greater than yourself, whatever that may be, right? Addiction is such an evil thing. It really is. Like, you know, I mean, it really makes you realize like this shit is not a joke. It's not a joke, you know? And I think, at least for me, and I just wanted to say this to you just from my heart, is like, I think one of the biggest lies that the enemy tells, or the negative energies or whatever it is that you believe in, is that, you know, the shame and the guilt, like, you know, those things that sit on your heart. And those are all things, man, that, you know, I hope and pray you over the years you've been able to kind of let go of and to not feel, because it truly is just this is the experience of addiction in general, where it takes you. It just, I don't know. I hope that makes sense. I just, you know, I want to give my condolences to you for that shit happening. And man, that's rough. That's rough. So, you know, you ended up going to the CRC.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
I was there for a week. This was about a week or 2 weeks before they would let me out. And so I missed his funeral. And so I had a lot of guilt over that as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I like what you said though about how powerful addiction is.
Yeah.
Because to someone who doesn't understand, it seems like, oh, she just didn't care about her own kid. She didn't care about her son's dad. And it's like, I know the truth. Like in my heart, I know that I loved them, but I just was caught up with this, and it was just more powerful than me. It was more powerful than that. And I wanted to do better and I wanted to do good, but I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't do it. And
I guess that's kind of the thing too, you know, is I just really want to make sure that I'm saying what I need to say, because it's like you're in here, you're opening up about some shit that I'm sure you don't like talking about, even though it's in the past, you know what I'm saying? But you're opening up, and I just think like it's so easy to be in that position and to be an addict and to feel like, you know, I did this shit, I did whatever, you know, that's how it lies to you, the addiction, you know, but you had your own internal struggle and battle on the inside of you that you didn't even have a grasp on for yourself.
Right.
You know, and that was evident in Maryland. It was evident when you came down here, and it was something that you were working towards. So it sucks because it's like you see so many clients here. You can't help anybody until you've had an opportunity to save yourself and to help yourself. It just sucks that had to happen. I really am sorry that had to happen.
And it just shows like how dangerous things like that can be in early recovery.
Yeah.
You know, and I know everybody's story is different, and like sometimes it does work out, but like he didn't listen to that advice and he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
You know,
and I mean, there's been stories that we've had in the past where it really it's that codependency. Like, well, if you use, I'm going to fucking use, so don't do that. You know what I mean? In reality, it's like, no, bro, if you're gonna use, you're gonna use. I mean, that's just what it is, you know? So you went through that situation.
Yes.
When you came out, did you get sober at that time? Was that like a God shot moment, or did you continue to keep?
Unfortunately, not yet. Like, so at a certain point, I could not deal with the trauma. And so I remember like the switch, and it's something I've done like to deal with things from the time I was a kid, where I just completely detached, you know, and it was like, I couldn't feel anything. Like I cried my eyes out, and then it was like, I could almost speak about it as if it didn't happen to me. And it was just like, I shut down. And so I tried it. My son was living with my mom. And so I went to stay with my grandparents again. My mom had her own place, you know, by then she was doing good, had her feet back on the ground, worked her ass off to keep that kid in her care, you know.
Amen, man.
Yes. Like my mom is like the most strong, amazing person like I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That woman has really gone through it. And
that's where you get it from. I can see it.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, so I tried it. I really did. But I was just so lost. And I even had a lot of people from AA. I thought, oh my gosh, they're all going to hate me. They're going to blame me for his death. And no, like they all reached out to me. And they were there for me, and they're like, listen, I just want you to know he made a choice. We don't blame you. Like they took me to meetings. They were there for me, and I tried it. But so basically that's when I added methamphetamine into my drug use. Was shortly after that. I was riding the bus places, you know, because I'd had the DUIs, and I just started meeting people. And yeah, and so then I would start staying out. After I added in meth use, I would stay out for days at a time, not come home. Picked up, you know, all kinds of more legal issues, more charges. It got to a point where I had felony warrants from that overdose and me just blowing off court and everything. So the police were showing up at my grandparents' house looking for me. And so in my mind, I decided I would just take my chances like out on the streets. So yeah. And that's another thing that like with addiction, I was more afraid of being sick, dope sick, because I know how the jail thing works.
Yeah.
And at that time, like you didn't have mat services, like you're going to just deal with it in jail, you know? And so I just was more afraid of going through that and more afraid of like having to face any emotions than of being on the streets.
Yeah, no. And that's another thing that we talk about too, is it's funny how addiction kind of puts a veil over your eyes where, you know, it's weird how it starts off fun, right? Isn't that fucked up? Like it starts off fun, and little by little, as like you're lifted up on this bullshit pedestal, layers are being removed from your life. Like your happiness is just layer by layer. It's not fast. It's not instantaneous. It's slow. Yes. And it's a slow decline.
Yeah.
And then, you know, going through this type of situation that you went through, the anxiety, the depression, the guilt, the shame, you know, it's like, oh, well, here's a drug that makes you feel good all the time. Like, here's me, you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy to me how I don't personally believe, especially as a faithful man, that there are coincidences. I feel like things happen for a reason. And it's crazy just to hear how the stories change like that with the positions, you know?
Yep, absolutely. And how I tell myself, this will be my bottom, or that'll be my bottom. And then I would hit a bottom, and then it would fall out, and it would be a new bottom. Like it would just be more and more that I was giving away. And yeah, I remember just at a certain point, just not caring and just going from basically dope house to dope house to trap house to trap house, wandering the streets, you know, doing whatever I had to do to say hi, not caring. And then I remember eventually getting picked up and I went to Navy and I was on the drug court program. So they're like, oh, we're going to give you a chance. I did their residential treatment. I did IOP treatment. And then I got to the transitional housing phase. So I was on the bus one day heading down to my drug court hearing and I met a boy on the bus.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so
that's how it works, man.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I had about 6 months at that point of clean time from going to treatment. And I met this boy on the bus and, you know, he had just gotten out of prison. And so I was like, perfect.
You know that Chasing Dragon song?
Yes.
That's exactly what that shit reminds me of, like Chasing Dragon. I can't remember how it goes right now, but
yeah.
I think that's how the song goes. Like the verse, he talks about meeting somebody on the bus.
Yeah. And so I left he asked me if I want to go on a date. And I said, oh, sure. So I left my transitional house and I went up to meet him at this restaurant, but it was also a bar. So I really, another reason why I enjoyed using was in my mind, I felt like it made me easier to not deal with other people, but be more open with other people or feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
When really that should have just been a red flag that, hey, this is not the right time for this, you know? Like you got more work to do before you can attempt something like this. So I got to the restaurant. And so then my addiction was creeping in and it said, oh, well, you know, you can have a shot. Like a shot will just loosen you up, like a shot of alcohol.
Yeah.
So I did it. And then once the shot hit my stomach and I got that feeling, I didn't care about being on this date anymore. I didn't care about this boy anymore. All I cared about was my drug of choice. So then boom, I was off. So I end up, you know, drug court, of course, finds out because I get back to the transitional house and I'm just wasted, blasted, you know, and they know that I'm high. So I remember them telling me, yeah, just come to your court hearing. We won't take you in, you know. So I showed up to my court hearing really high and they had me come sit in the jury box, didn't click. And so I was the last one to be seen, which usually like when you're the last one to be seen at like drug court or DTAP, it's usually because you're getting sanctioned or you're in trouble. So I was last to be seen and I started realizing like, oh shoot, like
this person's gone. This person.
Yeah. I was sitting up with the inmates in the jury box, like, cause they'll bring inmates in for their drug court hearings.
Yeah.
And so I got up to try to run and my attorney grabs my arm and was like, no. And yeah. So they basically blocked me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blocked me from leaving. They blocked me from leaving the courtroom. And so I'm hysterical and I'm like, no, I am terrified of being sick in jail. And so they give me a 5-month sanction. And then I had to do a year of treatment after that. So at one point in jail, I really got honest with myself and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore, but in a negative way. I was like, I don't want to do this probation anymore, this drug court. And so I went to my next hearing and I told the judge, I don't want to do drug court. And I said, I'd rather do my time. So I want to do my time and get it over with. So send me to prison, send me to do whatever you need me to do. But I don't want to do drug court. And I remember that judge being like, it was Judge Godoy, her saying, well, we hand selected you for this program. And I was like, well, that's good, but I'd rather it go to someone who's ready.
Yeah, well, that's cool, but
basically like a F you, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, just an attitude. And
they must have seen something in you that you didn't see in yourself.
Yeah. And it's ironic because later on, like when I finally do get it, I'm in front of that judge again. So it's kind of cool. Like, yeah. And
that's badass, dude.
Yes. I wrote her like a huge letter, just like thanking her, like while I was in there, you know, for giving me a chance again. But like, so I ended up doing a year in jail to kill my time. And I get out. Basically.
You're sober the whole time in jail?
No, but like, and so I get out, and I'm right off the rip, you know, back to what I was doing. Yeah, and so I basically then became involved in this cycle of picking up felonies, waiting in jail to have them reduced to like class 6s.
Yeah.
So like fighting them until I got them from like 4s down to a class 6, so then I could do term out and be done. And then it looked like a first offense again when I got caught again. So it was just big manipulative cycle, but also me understanding like I cannot do probation.
Yeah.
And because I was not ready. And so I go through that for a while. So then I end up getting in 2017 in this horrific motorcycle accident.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And almost dying. And so
Were you by yourself?
No. So I was on the back of the motorcycle with someone who's basically like a sugar daddy, you know?
Okay.
So I was on the back of a motorcycle. We got T-boned by this car who ran a stop sign. And I remember seeing her, but then not having enough time because it happened so fast to be able to tell him, like, look out.
Yeah.
So, like, basically, like, we were in the left lane. There was a car in the right lane. And this car was turning in somewhere. And the lady didn't see us because we were on a bike. It was so small. She only saw the car. And so she thought she could go and she blew the stop sign, hit us. And so I just braced myself for it. I was not wearing a helmet.
Oh man, thank God you're alive.
No, for sure. Like, so I hit the ground, and I remember hitting it on my head and my shoulders and sliding. I had road rash on my head, on my shoulder. I had road rash everywhere. And I remember wanting to pass out from the force of hitting the ground, but being like, no, stay awake in case you have like a concussion. And I'm like, oh my God, is my friend okay? So I look up and he's sitting, the bike had like snapped in half. He was like sitting on the front wheel of the bike and his bones were sticking out of his leg. And so at that point, like, I'm sitting up and I notice like red liquid, or I notice warm liquid, like all around me, like in my hands. And I look down and it's blood.
Ooh.
And my leg is literally like, it's hanging on by a flap of skin. Like, it had broken completely in half. The leg had got pushed into the pipe and it had burned all the soft tissue off. And my bones were out like this. And it was like hanging off. Like, my leg was decapitated or cut off. My leg was basically cut off. Yeah. And at that point, I was using a lot of drugs. And so I felt all that pain. Like, I didn't go into shock. I felt it, was screaming. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt in my entire life. I didn't have any shock. Like, I don't know what that is, but it was horrible. So a cop gets there first and he puts a tourniquet on my leg, basically saves my life like that. So I get to the hospital. I had to have 2 blood transfusions.
You still have your leg?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And so, like, they told me when I got there that they were going to have to amputate my leg from the knee down.
Oh, God.
And so I was like, okay. I had this crazy near-death experience while I was in the hospital. Almost died.
Oh, go like into that. What was that?
Okay, so I was basically like, I had an out-of-body experience is how it began. And so I could see myself laying on the operating table because I had to go into emergency surgery.
Dude, the fucking story we had yesterday was the same thing.
No
that
way.
is not a coincidence.
No.
Okay. So, all right. Woo, this is my favorite part of the story.
Yes.
So what happened?
It was mind-blowing. So I could see myself and I could hear what was going on. I could see the doctors and like the nurses, and I just felt like this pull. And all of a sudden I was up in like the cosmos, and like I could hear Saturn's rings and I could hear space. And it was just so wild. Like, I could see how everything is connected in life. It was weird, like from blades of grass. Like, it's so hard to just describe because nothing really makes sense in this reality. Everything was just connected, and I just saw people different. I saw everything different. It's like that missing piece was like revealed to me. It was weird. And then I was terrified at first. And then it was like I was in this place where it felt like I'd been there before. Like, it felt familiar. And then there was a being, but it was just light. And I felt like it was Jesus, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen.
And it was like I knew it was him. And it was like all that I felt was just complete peace and love. And it was like familiar.
That sounds like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
The peace, the love, the feeling like you're familiar, like a home. Like that's deep.
Yeah, and it was just like he wasn't in a form of a person. It was just of like a bright light. Like, and I was there and I felt comfortable there. But then it was wild because then I could feel like my body pulling my soul back down into my body.
Wow. Did you have the gentleman that we had in here had lost his mom, and same situation, but he said that his mom grabbed him and was like, "It's not your time."
Right.
Go. Boom. And pushed him back, and he like woke up, you know?
That's amazing.
So like, but for you, it was just like you felt the peace of wherever it was, that your spirit was like right in between those weird realms. Like, but it was obvious like it was not your time yet.
Right. Exactly. And it was like, there was no human emotions other than just like love and peace. And there's no fear. Wow. It was completely comfortable. But then all of a sudden it was like, it was like I felt that pulling. And I woke up screaming, like, when I had come out of surgery and everything, and I woke up just like screaming, like freaked out. It was wild. And I looked down and I like had my leg still after they had said like, we're going to have to amputate your leg. So I had like these metal rods that were screwed in from my knee. They went down into my ankle. So I was in UMC for 3 months. They had to do multiple surgeries, bone graft. They had to go in and clean it. The last one was a skin graft surgery.
Wow.
And then I went to a rehab center for a month after that. But meanwhile, this whole time they were pumping me with like IV Dilaudid. And so I wish I could say that I got it.
Yeah, no. Hey, and you know what? It happens. Yeah. And that's another thing. I knew that. Yeah. I had a feeling that was the case. But yeah, because they're pumping you full of these medications to keep you calm and to keep you chill. So it's like they're keeping it alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And then, yeah, it was bad because and the doctor explained to me, like, listen, like the fact that you abuse opiates, you've created more pain receptors in your brain. And so I'm not going to be able to manage your pain like I would a normal person.
Wow.
Like he gave me extra trying, he's like, I'm not inhumane. Like he gave me way more than they give anybody. Like,
a gallon connected.
Yeah. Like to try.
Yeah.
But he was like, but it's just, you're going to be crazy. In pain. And,
but the seed was planted though. And that's the shit that you didn't realize at that point. Like that experience that you had was the seed being planted in your soul.
Yeah.
But like seeds, they don't happen instantaneous. They take time to grow and mature,
Exactly. And like, yeah, it was wild. It just showed me that there is something, it is there. Like,
wow. Yeah.
And it was a little comforting to know for sure. Yeah. Like, or quite a bit comforting, honestly, because I'd always struggled with that with like my son's dad passing, Yeah. But yeah, so I went to the rehab facility to try to learn how to walk, of course, but with insurance, I was only able to stay there for a month. They were suggesting I get out in a wheelchair, but I was like, I cannot hustle the streets in a wheelchair. So I'll take my crutches. And because of the skin graft, I didn't have a hard cast, I had a soft cast. And so I would have to like do like wound care and things. Oh my God, it gets worse. Like,
yeah, no, I'm thinking of the amount of pain that you must have been feeling.
Yeah, it hurt. It hurt so bad. It took me like a year to actually be able to kind of walk on it. So I was out there and I had all these staples that were still in my leg from like the skin grafts. I was supposed to go and get them removed. So I went like 3 times. There was like hundreds in my thigh from where they took the skin and hundreds in my ankle. And I went a few times to have them removed until there was some that were in one of my nerves and it was shooting nerve pain at my leg. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take my chances. And I left the rest of them in there. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah. So like I am lucky to still have my leg because even at a certain point, like they were having me come in daily and them doing my wound care, even though that was something I was supposed to be doing myself, like the doctors, because
you're living out there.
Yeah. And they were saying like, listen, like if you don't start taking this serious, like you're probably going to lose your leg. So I would go in and out of jail. I would, and I would get picked up for felony warrants and they would take me to the jail. But because my leg was so disgusting and so bad, the jail would reject me from the jail and be like, no, make them take me to the hospital. And then I would just leave the hospital,
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was bad until finally at one point, one of the sergeants, and it was a female sergeant at the jail that day. And she said, nope, we're going to manage it. We'll stick you in the infirmary like you're staying. But yeah, a lot of things, I did a lot of wild things, but eventually I had got some charges that were a little more extreme too. And I didn't really care about being in jail because I could thrive in like controlled environments and be just fine. It was basically living out like life on life's terms and living out the day-to-day life I just had a problem with. And so eventually I was sitting in there and originally I had my mind made up, like, I'm just going to do time. Like it's easier for me. I enjoy being here. Like that's
You're
how
safe.
bad my life was. Yeah. But so finally I thought about it and I was like, well, what about like DTAP? What if I really had to reflect on my life? And I was like, I had started going in, I was younger than all the COs. It was funny. It was cute. It was whatever in my mind. Now it got to the point where it wasn't funny anymore. Getting older.
Yeah.
I'm missing out on all these experiences with my kid. In my mind, it's like when I was using, time stood still while everything else continued to move forward around me.
Like that Alanis Morissette video, the thank you video. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I still saw my son as a baby,
Yeah.
And so it was like, I don't know. It was so weird. It's like I was stuck in time. Like,
and your mom had your son the entire time. That's so good. Thank God for that, you know?
yeah, thank God he wasn't exposed to too much chaos.
Yeah.
Like he was exposed to like the absence. And it makes me sad that he'll never know how excited his dad was for him to be born, how much his dad loved him and how excited he was about being a dad. Like it sucks. Like he'll never know that.
He will.
You know?
I think he will. I think, I mean, just like how you went through your journey and you had to experience what you experienced, God was ready for you to make a change. He made it very known to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think just the same way that you felt that peace and that comfort, God will give your son that same peace and that comfort as he gets older too.
Yeah.
You
thanks.
know? So going through all of these, you know, situations, everything that you experienced, when do you remember was the first time that you really wanted or decided that you were going to take this recovery seriously? Like you weren't doing it for anybody else. You really felt like you needed to do this for yourself.
Yeah. So in the beginning of like 2019, when I got picked up for the last time and I was sitting in jail and I really just sat and reflected and I was like, I don't want to be an old lady, you know, coming in and out of here. Life is continuing to move forward around me, even while I'm still stuck doing the same thing. And I had to think about it. And I was like, should I ask for DTAP? Should I try it? Because if I mess it up, it's just going to be worse, you know, than if I just did my time now and got it over with like I normally do. Mm-hmm. So I had to really sit within myself. And at that point, they were putting like the max security females in the towers. And so I was in like a cell most of the pretty much 23 hours a day. And so I had a lot of time to really think about it, you know, and pray about it, think about it. And I was like, all right, like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to do it legitimately this time. And so I literally just made the choice and so I went in front of that same judge that I had told her to screw her drug court to. And I'd written her a letter and I begged her for DTAP. And one of the things I said was like, look, like I'm honest with you. I've always been honest with you. You've been my judge over the last 10 years. Yeah. You know, I've always told you like, nope, just let me do my time. This is the first time like I'm requesting help. I'm ready this time. And so I won't waste it, you know? And I told her like, I would be honest with you. So she gave it to me, like she gave me DTAP. And so I waited, I got into treatment. And it was funny because my surveillance officer and my PO told me, like later on in the DTAP program when I was doing good, like we waited outside for hours because we were sure that like you were gonna run. Like
that's crazy. They're preparing for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like I was like one of the, you know, higher risk ones, like that they were like, this one's not gonna do it, you know, just based on my past. But all these things that I had previously allowed like to take me out, I just didn't do it this time. Like before, also like body image was a huge one for me. Trying to use to stay thin was one of my triggers. But you know, I went through the whole metabolic backlash thing, gained my weight, and I didn't even care anymore. I was like,
and that body dysmorphia shit, especially when you're like doing fitness stuff. It's like I always think of that movie with The Rock and Kevin Hart where he gets all big, but he looks himself in the mirror and he's all fat. You know what I mean? It sucks.
Oh, I had that. I legitimately had that. Yeah, and I forgot to talk about that too. Like I went through anorexia in high school. I did modeling. I went through anorexia over that. Like, so that had been a huge reason also for why I got into drugs was to maintain that. But I just ended up just like really letting go and like surrendering. And I used to also think like, oh, I don't have to listen to this or that. I can follow these rules, but those rules don't apply to me. Or I can do this. And they like, you know, my PO or so-and-so tells me that I can't do this, but you know, I can do it as long as I don't get caught. Like it doesn't apply to me. Yeah. That's how I'd always thought. But this time, no, I literally like had the hardest time doing any kind of supervision like probation, but until I stopped fighting it. And when I finally was just ready to stop fighting it and being like, you know, my life sucks. Like I literally have nothing. You know, I grew up and I was smart. I had so many hobbies. I had so many things that I loved. And now my life has literally revolved around chasing and doing drugs. Yeah. Like I haven't watched TV even in years.
Yeah. You haven't had.
I would kick back.
It's just this constant rat wheel racing. I think of the hamsters on the wheel. Just, that's it, you know? Yeah. And it's like I said, the veil over your eyes. It's not until you finally you give yourself a little bit of time without that shit being in your system. And it's like, yo, what did I do? You know? Yeah, exactly. And it was like one of the things that I'd heard told to me so many times, like when I was withdrawing that time in jail where I made the decision, like, I never have to go through this again. Like, you know, and
gonna write out the withdrawals, because my withdrawals were horrific. Like I would not sleep right for months. I felt like I was like coming off, I was a chemo patient or something. Like I felt terrible, you know? And I was like, yeah, I really do never have to go through this again. Like I really do never have to experience this again. And yeah, it was like my world just went from being so big to being so tiny and being just so pointless. And so I was just done fighting it. And so I just did what I had to do. And I stayed in a residential treatment for 6 months. And then I did IOP treatment for 6 months.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, and once I stopped fighting and viewing like probation and DTAP and programs like that as the enemy, I saw how much they helped me.
Yeah.
So they helped me get my RSS certification. They helped me get into that and do that. They helped me get Section 8 housing, so I wouldn't be homeless, you know, because that's a huge barrier to getting and staying clean. And I was able to get that. I only needed it for like a year because I was able to get a job and then start supporting myself within a year.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how your thought process when you're ready changes, you know, like instead of you being like, and I think it just comes from that selfishness of like, you know, these people are lame or they don't get it or whatever. Like, whatever, man. Like, I'm never going to get clean. When you finally start realizing like they're not the enemy. No, and then you start feeling, that was the other thing that I talked about with the client was like, you have to be comfortable with checking yourself. There's nothing wrong with being like, hey, bro, I'm being a jerk right now. Or this is not good the way that I'm thinking. I need to check myself and change my mentality. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's okay to be like that. You finally reached that point.
Yes. I reached that point where I had been humbled enough through my addiction that like I could accept that. Like I could accept feedback and I wanted it and I looked for it and I wanted help and I took the advice and the direction and took the help and they were there for me and it was hard. You know, I had to go out and drop 3 to 5 times a week. You know, I had a surveillance officer, I had a probation officer, I had all these things I had to do. I had all these classes that I had to do. I had to get employment. But when you just do it and stop complaining about it, it was doable, you know? And I just was like, you know, I'm not going to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to do one thing at a time.
Yeah. And
I was able to work full time, work 12-hour shifts and still make my drops. No excuses. You know, I was able to check myself and be like, you know, you have to do it. Like,
and I mean, the amount of effort that, I mean, this is a substance that you continuously putting in your body, like all of that effort to go to all those little things to make yourself better. You were just putting all of that effort into that one negative thing.
Yeah.
So it's really just the shift.
Exactly.
You know?
And this thing that was trying to kill me, like I overdosed so many times with Narcan. I overdosed, like my heart had stopped. I was in and out of the hospital like dozens of times, you know? And it was just like,
dude, and thank God, like too, thinking about it too, that you were able to clear up and get to that thought process before COVID hit.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, I think like that alone sent so many people into addictions, and luckily the Lord was pulling you out. You know what I'm saying? At that time, right at the right time.
Exactly.
Crazy, man.
Yep. Yeah, it was wild. And I just, you know, they said go to meetings. I went to meetings. They said get a sponsor. I got a sponsor. The meetings really helped me. Yeah, a lot of things. Like I just surrendered. I completely surrendered. And it was like I knew that I was done. You know, and it's not one of those things where I get, you know, too confident or complacent or like the overconfidence where I'm like, oh, I'll never use again. I know better than to do that. But it's like when I look back on all the times where I attempted it deep down, like I knew I wasn't ready. Yeah. And this time I knew that I was ready. It's like, I feel like sometimes we know.
And I think and it's weird. Like that's another thing that's really hard to explain is like saying, it seems so easy to be like, yeah, I got this, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
But there really is like a piece of knowing like, hey, if I move a little bit too much this way or this way, like I can be in deep trouble again. It's like being on a tightrope or balancing on a tightrope. You know what I mean? So it's crazy because that's a hard thing I think for people to grasp on too is like, how can you be uncertain and still be so certain?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. In that, like, if I give it the opportunity, I know that it can creep back in.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, I'd reached a point where I was, unfortunately, like, my bottoms, like, had to be really low. Like, I had, you know, for me to become so broken that I was ready. Like, I knew that I was ready, you know, and I was such a broken person. And one of my biggest things and one of the biggest things that probation saw me as a red flag over was my attitude. And so that was one of the first things that I worked on. And the first things that I checked was, you know, yeah, we have things that come our way. Yeah, there are things that are chemical imbalances that create things that make us not happy, but there is some level of choice too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and once I realized like I have a lot of power over my attitude, over my mood, over how I react to things, how much I let things bother me, like my life just changed drastically in such even just a short amount of time. Once I started practicing that, like having that control.
And learning like the guilt and the shame and all that doesn't define you. You
Exactly.
know what I mean? And did you, with everything with your baby's dad, like did that give you a piece of that as well, like of understanding of all of that, like compartmentalizing, I guess?
Yeah, and so I did a lot of therapy. I was finally able to like address a lot of it and work through it, and it does give me peace, you know, like and so I have let go of a lot of the guilt and a lot of the shame and a lot of that using it as an excuse to continue using.
That's awesome.
But also now it's kind of like one of those things where I can make, like the only amends I can really make to him now is like a living amends.
That's beautiful.
You know?
I speak for the unspoken, breathe for the breathless, and see for the unfocused. That's what it's all about.
I love that.
You know, opening up and doing that. And I see you, dude, like before we even had an opportunity to meet, I would see, you know, you're out there constantly all the time helping people. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So right now where you're at in the position, BHT RSS, was this your first experience ever working in a place like this? Like once you got?
Yes.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. Even before I got clean, like I always dreamed about, I just would love to like try to help people, like try to show them that recovery is possible. No matter what you've done, no matter how far it's gone, like you always have a chance. As long as you're still breathing, like you still have a chance to recover. And that was like my dream. You know, and so I did work at like a different place for my first few years of recovery, but I was just really grateful to get in here and get a chance to do it. And now it's like my life just looks so completely different. You know, I get to have days with my son. I get to do a lot of things with my son.
That's so cool.
To be around whenever I want. You know, I'm present now for holidays, whereas before it was either I wasn't invited because I would just be so, you know, high or drunk or just unpredictable, or I just would make the choice not to be around because I didn't want to expose my family to it.
Yeah.
You know, but now it's like, my life is so much different. A lot of people are like, why are you so happy all the time? And I'm like, you know, with the amount of pain that I've been through, it's easy to be happy now. Like it's easy to feel gratitude. It's easy to find things to be happy. And I've noticed like one of the strengths that I've gotten from all of it too, is that going through things now are easy. Like I can handle things, like I'm more equipped to handle things now. And like little things or things that other people find to be huge things, I'm like, I got this. Like I can handle this as small potatoes.
No, I mean, it's true. And I mean, I was just talking about that. Man, I swear that's so crazy that client was in here talking. That's another thing too, that it talks about in the Bible is like, you know, you're still going to go through the storms of life. You're still going to be put in the fire. But the difference is like, I think once you've gotten to that other side, once you've built that faith and you've, you know, been able to get to where you're at today, the fire doesn't burn you anymore, and the storms are not strong enough to blow you away anymore.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
You know what I mean? And that's what it talks about in that book, is that, you know, the Lord's peace will always be with you. Like, and it's just crazy. I mean, that's an incredible story. Absolutely. Like I'm very, very proud of you, and I'm very happy to actually get to sit down and get to meet you. You know what I mean? Like that for the first time. It's really, really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The last question, you know, before we take off or whatever, is what would you say, you know, to a young lady that may be in your position, maybe 16, you know, years old right now, whatever, just kind of where they're at, or somebody at their most lost moment in their life? Like, is there advice that you can give somebody, this type of hope that you can give them?
Definitely reach out, like to family if you have someone. Because for me, when I was young like that, I felt like I couldn't talk to my family. Now I tell my mom everything. But she was always there for me, but I never saw her, you know?
Yeah.
Like I didn't see it when I was younger, you know? But geez, that one's a hard one.
It is. And that's why I say, like, I don't know. I mean, we should change it up. I guess it's just kind of.
I know it's horrible. You think I would have something, but like,
No, I mean, it is what it is. I think sometimes people have to go through their journey.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but it's also a beautiful thing to be at the end of the struggles that you experienced and to be on the other side of it now.
Yeah.
And to see, like, nothing that happened to you was in vain.
Right.
Like it wasn't, you know what I mean? At those moments in time when you're experiencing that heartache, it's like,
why?
Take me away now.
Yeah.
Like, please, why am I experiencing this shit? Why am I going through this? What is happening? If somebody would have been at that hospital bed with you with your leg off and all these things and been like, oh, dude, in 10 years, you're going to be grateful that this happened in your life or feel that sense of gratitude for it. You'd have been like, yo, get out of the room right now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And that was a wild thing too, because I was not really supposed to do as well as I've done. Like the person that was in the accident with me, we had identical injuries and he's headed for amputation. Like his leg won't heal. And my doctor told me, you're so young. Like I was 27 when that happened. And he was like, you're so young. I'm going to try to save your leg. But 80% of like the type of hardware I had to get fails within the first year. And he's like, you'll probably never walk right again, And I had this lady come in and she prayed for healing over my leg. Also, like I just had my mind set up too that like I'm not going to accept that. Like I'm going to walk. And like I've had my hardware removed. I had another surgery where they removed it because my bones healed back so perfectly.
Dang, for real?
Yeah. And my doctor was like, he's like, this is a miracle. Like the way that you have healed, especially with me.
That's cool.
Yes, is a miracle. He's like, I've never seen anything like it. And he was like, I would have never thought that you would be doing this good with your leg. Like,
that's Chris. So like, can you work out and everything still?
Yeah. Yep,
like
I can work
squat,
out.
deadlift, all that shit for real? Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have a wicked scar. It looks like Freddy Krueger, but like I run around, like I do everything, like all these things. He said, like,
Yeah, that's true. You never walk. You're always running like at a fast pace. Now that I'm paying attention, I'm like, yeah, she's always moving. That's cool.
Yeah.
Damn, that's nuts. That's really cool.
Right?
That's so awesome. Well, Austin, thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate it very much. Is there anything else that we should tap into or you feel like you want to talk about before we end the episode?
Just something really quick in that I've absolutely loved getting to know myself again, getting to know what I like to do, discovering new sober hobbies, getting into discovering life again.
Yeah.
I get to start back to school in January, like all these things.
What are you going to go to school for?
So I found out that felons can become nurses now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I'm going to work on trying to resolve some of my legal stuff, but I really want to go to school to be a nurse.
Cool.
And yeah, so just like my life is so much different, so much fuller now. I have all these hobbies. I do gardening. I have chickens that I love. It's kind of weird.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey.
But yeah, just that
Nurture
like
in nature, man.
Yeah, just be patient. Like trust the process. Like they say that and it sounds corny, but it's real. Like give yourself time.
Yeah.
To get to know yourself. That's what I've loved is getting to know myself again.
Man, and I think that's it. For anybody that's out there listening, just remember there's always hope. There's always hope. Don't let the disease lie to you. Don't ever let the disease make you feel like you're alone or that no one has ever experienced what you're going through. Well, that's exactly what this is for, is we have all experienced pain. We've all been through the struggle and we're all here for each other, right? That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, one last time, give it up to our homegirl, Cynthia, for coming through. Man, that was such a beautiful story. Ladies and gentlemen, for everyone out there that's listening, please, man, let's come together as a community. Let's pray for Cynthia that she's able to go to school and become the best nurse ever. Praying for her most definitely. And for all of those less fortunate, those that are still out there in the streets, please make sure that you share this episode with somebody else, whoever needs to hear it. We thank you guys for the continued support. Much love. God bless. And we will definitely see you on the next one. Peace.
I love it.
What's going on, everybody? This is Buddha from the Arcast, and I just wanted to thank you for checking out this week's episode. It means a lot, and if you could share it with a friend or a loved one, somebody in need in recovery, or maybe somebody who just needs that little bit of extra positivity in their life, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you would like to join us here on the Arcast, either in the studio live or online, hit us up. The links are down in the show notes of this episode, and on there, you can find direct links to our main website here at Americas Rehab Campus and all of our social media platforms. Follow us. We keep the posts positive and motivational, focused on recovery, health, and wellness. As you know, in this modern day and age, we need as much love as possible, y'all. And as always, if you or somebody you know is in need of substance abuse treatment, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We're open 24 hours a day, and our direct phone number is 1-833-272-7342. Once again, that phone number is 1-833-272-7342. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Much love and God bless. Peace.